Welcome back to the deep end of philosophy, where we question the very fabric of reality itself. Today, we are diving into one of the most heated debates in the history of thought, known as the battle between nominalism and realism. The question is deceptively simple, but the answer defines how we do science and how we understand the universe. The question is simply this: what actually exists? You might find or can imagine disagreement on whether there are wombats or unicorns or angels or neutrinos. But it gets deeper when we ask if there are classes or points or miles or propositions. Philosophy and the special sciences afford infinite scope for disagreement on what there is. One issue that has traditionally divided philosophers is whether there are abstract objects. Nominalists have held that there are not. They believe that only particular concrete things exist. Realists, or Platonists, as they are sometimes called, to avoid the baggage of the word, realists have held that abstract objects do exist. We need to figure out who is right because the stakes are high for science and logic. We do not need to get bogged down in a dictionary definition of abstract versus concrete. It does not matter if there are strange things like the equator or the North Pole which act like abstract particulars. For now, it will suffice to cite classes, attributes, propositions, numbers, relations, and functions as typical abstract objects. On the other side, we have physical objects as the concrete objects par excellence. The ontological issue touches these typical cases. It is not to be wondered that we feel more confidence in the existence of physical objects than in classes or attributes. Think about how you learned language as a child. Terms for physical objects belong to a more basic stage in our acquisition of language than abstract terms do. You learned apple by someone pointing at a red, round thing. Concrete reference is felt as more secure than abstract reference because it is deeply rooted in our formative past. It is about survival and basic communication. Terms for intersubjectively observable, physical things are at the focus of the most successful, unprepared communication. When two strangers meet in the marketplace, they can agree on a rock or a table. This rapport encourages confidence, however, unconsciously, that one is making no mistake about his objects. We are conditioned to these objects through direct stimulatory effects. If you kick a rock, it hurts. The evidence for physical objects is less far-fetched than the evidence for objects learned only in deep context, like numbers or sets. But here is where it gets tricky. This confidence is defensible, but still contestable. It fails to make a case for highly inferential physical objects like subatomic particles. It also seems to make a stronger case for sense data or raw feelings than for the objects themselves. If we only trust what is direct, then maybe only the redness exists and not the apple. However, we have to look at the purpose of positing objects. The likely rejoinder to the idea that we should only trust sense data is that no sufficient purpose is served by them. We do not need to posit subjective sensory objects to explain the world. We can explain our knowledge of physical objects directly by how our body surfaces are irritated by the environment. Intervening neural activity goes on, but nothing is clarified by adding a layer of sense data between us and the world. That is just excess baggage. We want a theory that is simple and effective. We favor treating cognition from within our own evolving theory of a cognized world, not fancying that firmer ground exists somehow outside all that. So let's locate this in our immediate context. We are balancing two standards. Direct association with stimulation favors physical objects, but utility for theory is the second standard. It is not just about weighing one against the other. The picture changes on mature reflection. Just knowing the stimulus meaning of a sentence does not settle whether we are talking about a physical object or a sense datum or nothing at all. We may be perceived to have posited objects only when we have brought terms into suitable interplay with the whole objectificatory apparatus of our language. This means using articles, pronouns, and the idioms of identity and predication, or in canonical notation, quantification. Let me give you a brilliant example. We habitually use the phrase "for the sake of." We say, "I did it for his sake." The word "sake" looks like a noun. It is in a term position. But do we believe in the existence of spooky objects called sakes floating around? No, we do not. We never say the sake was tall or I saw 3 sakes today. We do not bring the rest of the apparatus to bear. Sake figures in effect as an invariable fragment of a preposition. So just because a word appears in a sentence does not mean we are committing to its existence. The question of whether to treat a word as a term is a question of systematic efficacy. It is about utility for theory. If nominalism and realism are to be adjudicated on these grounds, nominalism's claims begin to dwindle. Why do we admit numbers as objects? The reason is precisely their efficacy in organizing and expediting the sciences. If we throw away numbers, physics collapses. The reason for admitting classes is much the same. We have noted the access of power that comes with classes. Let's look at a powerful example from the logician Frege. He gave us a definition of Ancestor using classes. He said, X is an ancestor of Y if X belongs to every class Z such that all parents of members of Z belong to Z and Y belongs to Z. This sounds complicated, but it simplifies logical theory immensely. It saves us from having to make piecemeal provisions for every family tree. The efficacy of classes becomes yet more impressive when we find that they can be made to serve the purposes of other abstract objects like relations, functions, and even numbers themselves. Classes are a unifying force. They allow us to get by with quantifiers as the sole variable binding operators. Closeness of association with stimulation stood up poorly as an argument for giving physical objects preferential status. However, we can salvage something from it. Sentences that are directly associated with sensory stimulation exhibit terms for physical objects in all sorts of positions, not just special ones. Common terms for physical objects function flexibly in our language. But the case for classes rests on systematic efficacy. This is a strong case against the negative claims of nominalism. Nominalists say abstract objects do not exist. But if those objects make science possible, then the nominalist is wrong. However, this does not destroy the preferential status of physical objects. In a contest for sheer systematic utility to science, the notion of physical object still leads the field. Physical objects are the champions of utility. On this score alone, one might still put a premium on explanations that appeal to physical objects over abstract ones. But we do not have to choose one and delete the other. We accept abstract objects grudgingly because they work. We accept physical objects enthusiastically because they work even better and are rooted in our communication. We should not scorn those earlier causes for confidence. The fact that terms for physical objects are basic to our language and at the focus of successful communication is important. Showing why certain terms are felt as comfortable termini of explanation is not to render them otherwise. So, where does this leave us? It leaves us as pragmatists about reality. We assume the existence of neutrinos and numbers not because we can touch them, but because they make our theory of the world work. We are realists because realism works. We are not nominalists because nominalism restricts the power of science. The universe is populated by whatever our best theories need to be true, whether that is a stone, a star, a set, or a number. Thank you for listening to this exploration of ontological decision-making. Keep questioning what is real, and I will see you in the next video.